the energy was going into my sketches, and then when I sort of scaled them up into a bigger painting, it was sometimes you lose that spontaneity. So I stopped doing that, and I paint direct onto a bigger canvas now. So I don't do the sketches, and what I do more is I make sort of I would say visual sketches that I sort of wander around the garden, look at the plants that are coming up, and use those as references. So I do a lot of thinking and these sort of visual sketches before I even start to do a painting. But when I'm in my studio, I'm quite clear on where I want the painting to go. Because I've just been a lot of thinking, a lot of sitting in the garden, looking out the window and things, the plants, things that I've really enjoyed planting or growing. Then what I would do in the studio, I usually have about 5 paintings on the go at the same time, and I'll have them all at different stages of sort of completion. And the reason why I do that is because I paint in oil, and it can take a while to dry. And I actually don't like to overwork the canvas, because it's often the colours can go quite muddy if it's very wet, or you can make the paint can get quite thick. So I try and avoid that. So I'll paint with very pure colour, because I like the luminosity and the translucency of the oil paint. So it'll just be the pure colour without any white mixed in it, because it has when you do that, you can get a lovely depth with the colour, and you get the intensity of the oil paint. But so I let the paintings dry, and I usually work only on my paintings for about 4 hours, and then I'll stop and leave it, let it dry, and I'll move on to another painting that's dry, and I slowly build up the image that way. And I will start using white in the colour to sort of build up sort of the depth of the image and the composition. The birds in my garden, in my paintings, are just because I sort of like gardening, and the birds arrive because I encourage them. So that's how they started to appear in it. With my painting, I play around with the image and the depth in the painting. So I do a suggestion of perspective or a horizon line, or sometimes I don't, and I really like to keep the image quite flat and two-dimensional. I'm fascinated because I quite like when you get an element of abstraction in the painting, or pattern with it, and you're just using colour of the flowers and just enjoying that element. So it's a fight sometimes with my paintings to keep a distance in it, and then keeping it so it's kind of a limited space going on. And it's something that I just enjoy that side of playing around with the image. I would say the influences, I really do, I've always loved the frescoes of classical Rome, and in particular, I love the frescoes from Villa Livia in Rome, where it was a lovely frieze painted in a subterranean room, where they brought the garden in, and apparently they used to use this subterranean room to eat in the summer when it was too hot to sit outside, and they wanted to bring the garden into a domestic environment. They are really beautiful paintings, and I love the subtle tones of these frescoes because they're decayed and the plasters sort of crumble, and I try and create that with my painting. So I use quite subtle tones, build them up. I sometimes use a palette knife to sort of give that image of the plaster has broken the image down and things. I just think they're absolutely beautiful paintings. Other artists that I like are, I love Gustav Klimt, because I just like the pattern and that decorative element to his work. And I do like David Hockney's work, because he'll use repetitive marks that become like a pattern in it, but it's always also describing, an image or a scene or a landscape. I'm going to keep my work. Right, so see what else I might have to say about my work. Oh yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to create is, in my paintings, is an idyllic view or image of a border of a garden. I'm using my garden as inspiration, but I'm not painting a specific scene from my garden at all. I'm using it as inspiration, and I use the flowers as an amalgamation to create an idyllic image, or an Arcadian world of beauty and celebration of nature, flowers, and the colour of all the plants and leaves and flowers. I feel that I try and capture that brightness in full summer or spring, and they're the times that I paint my garden. So I don't have winter scenes or anything like that. So I just love all that when everything is in full bloom and looking absolutely beautiful. So I am just celebrating how wonderful nature is, and I want to bring that into people's houses so that they become like a window of the natural world. While it may be winter outside, you can look at a summer view, and how it's very joyful and something pleasant to look at. I hope you feel that too with my paintings. And then I think I'm quite happy to take any questions if you like, or if you have anything to say.
We do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Right, let's have a think. So you mentioned that it can be quite seasonal, I suppose, how you see what kind of comes up and down in the garden. So are there sort of broad expanses of the year where you sort of don't have that visual reference, or that changes? Or?
Yeah, no, I usually sort of just have, like in January or February, I'm sort of just planning what I might do in the summer. It can be quite a quiet time for me. I do use, I'm a photographer in my garden. My camera's just full of pictures of my garden, so I use those as references when they're not there. And so I'll plan what plants I'm having in the garden. I usually do grow my own flowers in the greenhouse and then plant them out in the garden. And what I do find it's really nice to use the photographs I have of the garden, and sometimes of my paintings. When I'm painting, usually at the end of the day I'll take a photograph of it, and then I'll look at that in the evening or the next day. I find that really helpful to highlight if I can see issues with the painting, it's not working quite right, or the composition's not right. So it's just really good it's so helpful to do, for me, to see those errors and then try and correct them. So I will have, I am sort of geared towards the summer and spring, but I do refer to photographs as well to carry on working and things. But sometimes in the winter, I have also worked on, or done some work where I'm sort of using like Dutch still lifes and the golden age of Dutch painting, which is very dark backgrounds, and using the flowers. And I really love that richness that they have, and I will work on those in winter months. So, and it's bringing out the opulence of the colours against the dark background, which take a while to build up. So I'll use lots of glazes and layers of oil and paint, which you have to let dry. When you paint the flowers, and you just put another glaze on, and I just use a rag and just rub away where I don't want that glaze to be on, and then you just build up this whole layer of process. You get a lot of depth and richness with that. But I'm usually kept quite busy. This time of year is really difficult because I just want to garden, so I don't paint because it's really busy. Or things are happening, they need sort of tailoring or work.
Great, thank you. Another question is, you've mentioned sort of Dutch masters, and you mentioned Klimt earlier. How do you think your work? Would you describe yourself as an impressionist, or how do you think that term fits with the work
Yeah,
that
I
you
mean,
make?
I am. I mean, I try sort of with my work. I quite like the loose elements. Sort of, I'm using paint for paint. A celebration of using paint. But so I'm making painting in an impressionist way. But then I do use areas where I sort of will hone in on detail as well and try and sort of. And then my paintings can be like a bit of a battle of being quite loose and using fluid brush marks and quite painterly, and then using some areas where I sort of concentrate on some detail and try and pull that together. And it's always a sort of a fight going on, how far I go. And sometimes they go a little bit more detail, sometimes they go a little bit more a looser work. I mean, when I do is with my paintings, I just paint, so building up the layers. I'll usually sometimes I bring them into the house and just have them in the house, and then I just keep looking at them, and then I can just think, do I need to work more on it, or don't I? And I sometimes call it just meddling. So I'm just take them back in the studio and they start embellishing more on it and things like that. Sometimes it can go very wrong. Sometimes it works really well. If they're going wrong, they usually sort of stay in my studio and just hang on the wall, and then I leave them for a bit, and then just think I'll work on it again some other time. So, yeah.
Okay, and another question, does literature play a part in your inspiration and where you sort of found a joy for this? Some of it just reminds me of pastoral poetry, and I just wonder if that's...
I'm aware of, yes, and sort of sort of Claire and things like that. The poetry and the joy of nature. Yes, there is an element of that. I wouldn't say that's like a massive element to my work. It really is about, my joy of living in a rural environment. I grew up in a rural environment, and I've more or less come back to it after living about 26 years in London. I've moved back to sort of how I grew up, really. So it's really nice to have those passions again. Because when I lived in London, wherever I've lived, I've always had a garden or an outside space, and I just cram it with plants, because I just can't stop buying plants. So my garden in London, you couldn't sit down because it was just full of, and the table that you had to have drinks on was just covered in plants and things. So now where I live now, because I've got a bit more space, it's quite nice to expand on. But I have limited myself to going anywhere near plant sales or garden sales because I can't stop buying.
Great. The other one was just a question about, have you got any sort of, most of our artists have some kind of crazy story from their earlier career where something goes horribly wrong, but they manage to save the day. But it's a bit on the spot, I suppose.
I can't think of anything that's gone through.
Right. You don't have to tell the group if it's...
No, I don't think I have any major disaster. Oh, I have. I was working on some work. And I was moving house. I was buying this house, and it was all going really tense, and we didn't know whether it was going to exchange, and the people that were selling it were a bit of a pain in the neck. And I was painting where I was living, and I was working on this whole lot of work, and it was really buzzing on my mind, and I was getting more and more anxious, and I was using the palette knife, trying to create that sort of those plaster and things like that, and I put the palette knife right through the canvas. And it just ripped a great big hole through it. So there's that. That had to just be Stanley knifed and used as, and then and then either reuse the stretcher, which was a real pain, and I was really pissed. I think that's all. That's about the major disaster. It wasn't I couldn't save the day with it though. Yeah.
I have a question. How you discover this passion, from the childhood, or how would you describe that you're sexually gifted here? Because there is an emotional connection with your paintings, which is fabulous.
Thank you.
How much it's your technique develops over.
It's with any artist, I think I've always it's always drawn and painted, and it was always encouraged when I was a child, and then when I was at school, that sort of, I was known at school for in the art class and things like that. So it's sort of been there. I think that as you paint, and then I did my foundation in art in Cambridge, and I got to Falmouth School of Art to do a degree in painting. And I think just by painting, you just learn how to mix colours, and your technique sort of develops, and you may have a natural language. I think artists have a natural language the way they paint and things. I mean, of course, you're influenced by other artists as well. But as you become, as you paint more, and as you get older, you learn a lot of, how to apply the paint, how to mix the colours, and it just becomes natural. And it's really hard to, if you actually wanted to teach someone how to mix colours, it's so natural. It's like when you have to sort of deconstruct it, it can be quite difficult, because you just say, in your head, it's just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you're just mixing away, and then it'd be hard for me to say, to start someone off, but that's what teaching art does, to do. But there's always been, because I grew up in a rural environment, and we were encouraged as children to go on and to be aware of nature and things, and it was all around it, and we'd go on walks, and we would, I think my parents would listen to birds, not noisy, but I used to find really boring. My dad would make us stop and listen to a bird, and we couldn't hear it. And then he would make us sort of count how many different species of butterfly we could see on the walk. So it was there. It's always been there. It's just a continuation really of the passions that I really enjoy. So, yeah.
Sorry, last question. How difficult it is for you emotionally to let painting go?
To go. Yes. I mean, in the past it has been hard. I mean, some painters I really like, and then it can be. But then what happens is, I'm sure it happens to other artists, you're painting a series of work, and then you may like one of the paintings in that, and then you really like it, that's really, really good. And then you'll start painting another lot, and then you think that one's really nice and happy, so then you let that go. So it's evolving. I found as you paint more and you're showing in galleries, it's easier for you to sort of let go of the work and things.
Going back to your university days, have you always painted garden scenes and nature, or did you do something really off the wall at uni?
Yeah, exactly. And no, I haven't. Because when I went, because I was down in Falmouth, and it was a lovely art school, and it was really weird. I mean, all the students were just anti-doing anything like seascapes, beach scenes, or anything else. Gnomes and eyes school and all that. So it was a bit. We didn't do it. When I painted a lot of figures and things, and then, like you say, when you're at art school, and when I was there, it was great. They'd give you, they'd make any canvas, whatever size you wanted, and it gave you that opportunity, which is very hard to achieve when you're not at art school, and you would just let rip and just do loads of crazy things, sort of imagery. I mean, when I was at school in the 80s, it was very popular sort of neo-expressionism, the German expressionist painting. So there's a lot of painters that we really loved and influenced by, and things that I painted very loosely, and they would be big figures and sort of interior scenes, but they were.
Have you kept any?
I've got one from my degree show, and I sort of got rid of the others because they were sort of 7 feet by 6. We were so spoiled at art college. If there was a technician, you could just say to him, "Can you make me a canvas this size?" And then he would just make it and prime it, and then just walk it into our space and say, "Here you are." And I know it's not like that today. I mean, we were very lucky, and they'd give you an allowance for the paint. And it was all subsidised, all the oil paint. So you had an amount every term, and you just used to go to the shop and say, "I'd just go in there and buy tins of oil paint," and they'd just tick it off your account. And it just got higher and higher as you went through the years. So in your third year, you got loads of money, to paint. I know it's not like that today. We're incredibly lucky. how the art school system went. And it was about leaving you to be free. And then, but my art school, you had to have a crit every 4 weeks, so you had to drag all your paintings into this room, and then all the head of painting and your lecturers would just rip you apart. Or this say, you know, what the hell's going on, and what are you trying to achieve, and you know, things like that. So you weren't let off. It was like freedom, but you were really put through the grill every 4 weeks, and then they would off you and put you on probation if they thought you were really going very wrong. Didn't happen to me.
Remembering crits at university, did that not just make it so that you're really good at arguing with people now?
Well, no, I think they're very good at arguing. I found them really grueling to do. They would really fire questions at you, and then you'd have to try and articulate what you were trying to do. And when you were about 19 and 20, you didn't quite know what you were doing. So, yeah, that was harder.
Fair enough.
So you have got to be good about articulating what you want to achieve and things, the way you're going.
It's probably better than just arguing with them, isn't it? Yeah, thinking
back. But you do argue with them when you're at college.
Well, you get a bit defensive and you're like,
yeah,
no.
well, yes, yeah, and then yes, yeah, you do. You're trying to. Yeah, but it is interesting when you've got like 4 or 5 of them all stands, you know, giving their but it's good to do, I suppose, for you, because that's what it's like if you are going to be a painter. People will ask about your work. I mean, it's all subjective. Some people don't like what you do, other people like what you do. And, you know, I've got galleries that I show in, and I know the gallery owner doesn't like how I work. I can tell, but they like to have a collection of different artists and things like that. Are you just aware of that? But that's part and parcel of...
We like your work. Love it.
Any more questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about English, but I tried to ask.
Thank you.
Do you have your specific ritual before you start your work, painting?
Other than the fact that I'm thinking about what I'm going to do, so I'm just like being surrounded by my subject matter, and I sort of, I'd say there's an awful lot of thinking and doing. It looks like I'm not doing very much because I want to be on my mind all the time about where I wanted to go. So in a way, that is a bit like a ritual to start, and then. Like I said, I use the paint in lots of washes of thin, pure colour to build up the image first. So that is more or less like a ritual. And if it's not, I'll use a rag and sort of wipe some of it off, and then I use big brushes as well to sort of like map it all in, and it just looks like an abstract, chaotic mess. But I know where the tones want to be, darker tones behind and things like that. And I try and always leave some of that before I start laying on other layers and things. So that, in a way, is sort of a ritual, I would say, to do.
Do you experiment much year on year with what you grow? And do you choose anything to grow because you want to paint it?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
It's very quiet.
Yeah.
Do you experiment year on year with what you grow?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things I sort of like. I mean, it's weird. It's like there are plants that you really love to grow, and then they hate where you live, or especially around here in East Anglia, we have extremes of temperature, and there are plants that there's a plant that I really like called an Echium pinolana, which is from the Canaries, and it hates the frost. It grows to about 15 feet tall or 7 feet tall. It's biannual, so it has to sort of grow over winter as a plant, and then the second year it'll just shoot right up with lovely purple flowers. They have them in King's College Garden, which I'm really envious of, because they have a big lovely wall, and it keeps the frost away because it's warmer. And my garden's quite exposed, but every year I try and grow them, and every year they die. And I wrap them up in fleece and things like that. They're not all of them done. I've got I think I planted 28 seedlings that I had. I've got 2 left after the frosts that we had, because we just have extreme temperatures here. Because it's like, my garden just died in the summer this year because it was 37 degrees or whatever it was, and then we had -10 few nights, and then killed a load of my bay trees and olive trees that are completely dead. And all brown, and they don't look like they're going to come back. I sort of scratched the bark to see if they're green, and they're not. And it's like, you just think, like, how are we going to garden in this area? Because we just get all of it, don't we? You know? I mean, when it was hot, it was like, when it was really hot, I mean, it was really eerie. When it went to, was it 37, 38, and no birds, nothing. It was just silent. And they didn't come out until about 7 in the evening. It was just dry. I had a pond, I've got a pond in my garden, an old farm pond, and I've never seen it dry right out completely. And it's like it's been there for hundreds of years, and then all the water naturally goes to it. So I don't know. What plants are we sort of semi-arid plants that we grow? But I think like they will not survive because we have frost as well. So, but I do, and there are plants that I really love, and I've bought them, spent a lot of money buying them, and then they've just disappeared, or don't like it. So I suppose you have to I'm now going with the plants that are happy in my garden, and I've come back after the summer drought and things. So.
You said that obviously your garden inspires your paintings, but then it's not of a particular.
No.
Have your paintings ever inspired your garden? Have you ever looked at a painting and thought, oh, I really want to plant that up exactly like that?
Well, if you come to my garden in June, it does get a bit like this. It's chaotic. It's just a riot of colours. I pack it in. So there's no soil to be seen. It's just things just fighting.
And do you have an amalgamation of different colours, or do you?
Yeah, no, there are areas. So I just have lots of purpley things and violets and things like that, and then I'll plant a load of sunflowers in some area of the garden, so it'll just be all like. And I try and grow the sunflowers with the black ones and the orangey ones and yellow and things like that. So that will be going on. So there are areas that they do have some sort of colour sort of theme going on in it, but there are other areas where it's just a complete chaotic mess. Or people would say that. I mean, if you were a proper gardener, they would just think, oh my god, it's just a riot going on here. And I love that the meadow I've got, or a bit of meadow, it's not massive, but and I only cut that once a year, and that just like is just, I just let things just go wild, and it goes about this high, and I do plant some things in it, but other things I just leave, and it's just, I mean, a lot of them could be weeds and really tall dandelions and things. So, but I love it. It's like that sort of wildness, but it's manufactured by me. But it's very hard to create a wild flower bed. You have to get the soil to get very weak. You can't have any nutrients in it, and then you've got to drain it of nutrients. So I have planted yellow rattle in it, which latches onto the grass and weakens it, so that it's happening over time. And that's been really helpful to do.
Can I ask, you said that you paint it and then you let it dry
Yes.
and move on. How many layers does it take? There's so abundant
Yeah,
these paintings.
no, I do.
It looks like there are
loads of layers. I mean, often people will say to me, how long did it take me to do a painting? And I'm just saying, I don't really know, because I'll work on a lot of time, many times on them. And it'll just be like 2, 3 or 4 hours, and I'll stop, and then let it dry, and then there'll be more layers and things like that. Sometimes they work with not so many layers, and I'm quite happy with how it's gone. So it's just building up, and different layers.
And you paint a lot of tulips as well.
Yes,
Are
I
you special tulips?
Yeah, no, I try to find really lovely parrot tulips and things in the garden. They're quite harder to find the really unusual colours and things, I find. But somehow I do. Sometimes I go to the Netherlands and get some bulbs there and things, so they have a different variety of things, which is harder now because of Brexit. You're not meant to bring in things like that. They do get smart. But I love tulips. They're so beautiful. and they're great to paint. I really enjoy them. So, yeah.
The European fresco, I was just blown away by that. It was just exquisite. Have you got any ambitions to do frescoes?
Well, no, I have. I mean, it's quite. I haven't sort of been asked at all. I mean, it's quite interesting to paint that, because it's like the way they painted frescoes. The plaster was wet, and then the pigments like draw. You know, it's a massive skill at how they did it. I mean, I'm just blown away by them. And if you go to like Pompeii, and then the Villa Livia frescoes are just stunning. And it's just incredible how there must have been these amazing skilled artists like 2,000 years ago that were just employed by the wealthy Roman people to go around and paint these wonderful scenes. And I always find it amazing how all that knowledge was lost, and we didn't have that knowledge again until like the 14th century. We lost all that knowledge of perspective. I mean, the fine sort of stucco plaster work that they could do as well when you go to Pompeii is just astounding, and it's just copied in big stately homes today. You can see where all the influences are. But the paintings, I mean, all the perspective, everything's there. It's just incredible. And you just think, I mean, when you see Villa Livia and Pompeii, but the emperor's palaces must have been incredible for painting that was there. I love them. They're so beautiful painted.
Well, should we enjoy looking around the exhibition? And
Yes.
Too shy to ask Fletcher in front of everybody else.
Please
grab him
just
and-
come up and have a word with me. And I'll have a glass of Prosecco.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.